There's an old four-word cliche phrase that I want you to keep in mind while you watch this battle. It goes, patience is a virtue. And that's true in many walks of life. It's also true in video games like World of Warships Legends, especially World of Warships Legends in a match where you've got 4 destroyers on either team for a grand total of 8 destroyers in a single match. These matches often end in disaster. The destroyers push out, and they instantly get spotted, and then they get sunk somewhere within the first 5 minutes. It always happens in games with multiple destroyers, but especially when you're playing destroyers as a class, patience is a virtue. You really want to stay alive for the entirety of the game so you can exert influence throughout the duration of the match. Now, with that in mind, we've spawned near the Charlie Cap with 2 battleships, and I think we've got a Kronstadt coming our way. So we're, of course, going to play the Charlie Cap. We can see a battleship over there approaching in the distance, but we don't yet have vision of exactly what might be here. We know 2 things, though, or at least we know one thing. We know we're located by a destroyer. So there's another destroyer spawned somewhere near this cap, and he's got us RPF'd. Meanwhile, we don't have the RPF skill because we're not running Twist and Track or Perceptive. Instead, we're running the skill that gives us extra range on these Kitakaze guns, which is something I like to do. And, well, the cap is not being contested, so we're alone in it. But we see these battleships closing in, so we're going to turn our nose back towards spawn, and we're going to start reversing. That's when the cap gets occupied by the enemy destroyer. We see a radar come courtesy of the Kronstadt behind us. It does pick up the Shimakaze in the capture circle, but we don't have the ability to shoot him. And we know that the enemy destroyer in this cap circle is sort of directly in front of us because our detectability is 6 kilometers by sea. It's covering the entire cap circle except for a little sliver of it that's basically, well, I guess directly behind us since our stern is pointed that way. So we know generally where the enemy destroyer is in the cap just by looking at our detectability ring and observing the fact that we're not spotted. Now, what we don't want to do is push straight into this enemy destroyer, and why not? Well, because there's a Borgonia and a Yamato out there. Borgonia is 9 kilometers away, Yamato is 11, and there's another Yamato, I think, pushing in 13 kilometers away. So if we push bow in to the enemy destroyer and get spotted, his 3 battleship teammates are probably going to be able to shoot at us, and they're going to be able to take away a lot of our HP. Meanwhile, our battleship teammates have decided to take up a position right next to each other in the same grid square behind an island over there on the flank. So they're not going to be much help to us if we spot the enemy destroyer, only maybe the Kronstadt directly, I guess, in front of us. If you judge the position of our ship based on where our bow is pointing, the Kronstadt in front of us may be able to shoot at the destroyer, but probably not those 2 battleships. Meanwhile, the enemy battleships would be able to shoot at us. So we reverse into the Elbing because we knew sort of where he was just by looking at our detectability. We instantly smoke up because we see one of the battleships has come around the island over there and the Elbing shot. So the Elbing's going to remain spotted. Of course, his battleships do open up on us, but I think they mostly miss there because we deployed our smoke screen. Elbing deploys a smoke screen of his own when he realizes he's hard spotted by our teammates, and now the situation is reset. What are we going to do? Well, our torpedoes are almost off cooldown, and the Elbing is a very slow destroyer. We can see he hasn't left the cap, and he doesn't have a lot of real estate to work inside of the cap with that smoke screen. We were able to avoid his torpedoes. We could, of course, have suspected they were coming. The Elbing's torpedoes, I think, reload fairly quickly, but they're also really slow and exceptionally easy to dodge if you know where they're coming from. In any case, the Elbing smokescreen isn't very big, so we launch our torpedoes right in the center, and judging by where his shell tracers start emanating from, he is sitting right in the center of the smokescreen. So these torpedoes are likely going to hit. We just have to wait. And now we're going to sort of turn around. We're going to point our nose back toward our own smokescreen, which is up for 30 more seconds. Why are we going to do that? Well, there's a possibility the Elbing comes out of the smokescreen and spots us. And if he does, we're still in the same boat where we've got 3 battleships that can shoot at us. So if that happens, we want to be able to duck back into our smoke screen and break line of sight for at least a moment. We do manage to catch the Elbing with a single torp, but it's not quite enough to take him down. We spot him momentarily, but we don't shoot because his battleships are pushing straight into us. He spots us too. He shoots at us, but he misses. We get back into our smoke screen, and now we're thinking, well, what are we going to do? We still can't really open fire on these guys. Our smoke screen has gone out. We're going to deploy the torpedo reload booster now, and we see that the Borgonia is sort of telegraphing his intentions. Looked like he was going to push into the cap, but it seems like he's decided better of it because he knows that there's a destroyer inside. So instead, he's going to turn and maybe he's trying to start kiting away. At least that's what I think he's doing. So we launch our torpedoes in his path, and now we're going to reverse back into the Charlie Cap once more. Note that 6 minutes have passed in this game and we have not secured this cap. That's fine. We don't need to secure the cap if it means losing our ship. If we had more aggressively pushed into that Elbing and been spotted and lost all our HP to this fleet of battleships over here, we probably would have sunk, and we would already be back into port trying to figure out what ship we want to take out next. So patience really does pay off in this game. And there, 2 torpedoes catch the Borgonia, they take him out. Suddenly Yamato is alone over there on that part of the map, and he's going to start turning away. But we realize something. The other Yamato has gone behind the island over there on the outside of the cap, and this one has just shot his gun. So if we open fire, no capital ships can shoot at us, at least not at the moment. But the Elbing shoots at us when we open fire. That's exactly what we wanted. That was intentional. There was a reason we opened fire at that particular point, and it was in hopes that the Elbing would return fire, which he did. We knew he'd be on almost no health because we hit him with a torp, and so we're able to easily take him out as our second kill of the game with that little salvo of AP into his broadside. Yamato does get to shoot at us a little bit, and he does take away a little bit of our HP, but it was worth it to take out the Elbing. Meanwhile, Yamato is going to have to retreat, and this other Yamato is going to start pushing into our 2 battleship teammates. Charlie is as yet unclaimed. Our team has managed to flip both Alpha and Bravo, so we might as well take Charlie since we're still here. The enemy team only has 4 ships left alive, and we have 6, so you might be looking at this thinking, well, this is a guaranteed win, so not much left to see here. But of course, this is World of Warships Legends. The enemy team is going to bring our team down to 4 ships as well. Yamato over here is pushing into our 2 battleship teammates who, once again, are still sitting in the same grid square behind that island, being not especially the most useful, let's just put it that way. We're approaching the Charlie Cap again. This time there's nothing to stop us from taking it, so when we do get into it, we will end up securing the capture ribbon, and therefore securing quite a bit of XP for ourselves. Now we're evaluating this Yamato out here. What is he going to do? Do we think he's going to sort of stop and start bow tanking and maybe reverse when he's got these 2 battleships in front of him? Maybe not. It looks like they're sort of behind the island, and he's not really shooting at them, so he probably doesn't actually have shots on him. Meanwhile, we have a smoke screen ready, so we start deploying it so we can farm this Yamato, aiming precisely at his superstructure in hopes of getting some fires. There's one, and hopefully we can get some more HE penetration damage into that superstructure. The Kitakaze can be quite a menace if it is allowed to farm any ship for a long period of time from the confines of a smoke screen. Unfortunately, we're not really going to be able to get to do a whole lot of that in this battle. Our smoke screen is now, well, it's still got a minute left, but that was our last one, so any more gunboating that we do after this will have to be in open water or from behind islands. But Yamato is pushing in. He's taken down our Prinz Ruprecht to almost no health, and he's finished the Prinz Ruprecht off. Our torpedoes are probably going to catch him and take him out, but there is our friendly Yamato in front of him. He gets a decent chunk into him. I'm surprised he doesn't just sink him outright, but we're going to open up with our guns because he's on such low health. We yoink the kill from the friendly Yamato, who absolutely didn't deserve it. No offense. well, maybe a little bit of offense, don't put your battleships in the same grid square and sit them behind islands for the entirety of the game. Move your battleships around. It's about trying to get yourself into a position where you can get the broadsides of enemy ships. That's the whole name of the game with battleships, and you can't do that if you're sitting in one grid square with your teammate and not moving. You especially can't get crossfires, so it's very easy for whatever battleship's facing you to angle against the two of you if you're sitting in the same grid square. In any case, enough about that battleship. This game is obviously looking like a victory. There's only 3 ships left, one of whom is a mostly dead Yamato that simply just doesn't know it yet. He's sort of kiting back into the enemy spawn, and there's no point in chasing him. He's going to sink before we ever reach him. But there is a very pristine Minnesota out there, and there's still 1 destroyer left, which I believe is an enemy Shimakaze. We don't have much intelligence on him, except for the fact that we know he's a Shimakaze. We have no idea if he has a lot of HP or very little HP, but we do know the Minnesota is on more or less full health, and he's pushing into our Kronstadt. Our battleship that was hiding behind the island is now pushing toward the center of the map. It's going to be a little while before he reaches us. And, well, I don't know if he's got the range to shoot at this Minnesota or not. I guess that remains to be seen. Minnesota, for his part, is going behind that island. Looks like he's going to charge straight through that gap, which, honestly, if I were him, not necessarily a great idea, given the fact that there are still 2 destroyers left alive on my team, and the Minnesota may or may not suspect torpedoes are going to be incoming if he does cross that gap, but I do intend to put torpedoes into that gap, and it looks like my teammate Shimakaze also has the same idea. Torpedoes are about 10 seconds away from being off cooldown, and we're going to wait until the clock on that timer hits 0 before we launch the torpedoes, right? Well, maybe not, because look at that, there's Shimakaze sailing right in front of us, so we can't launch the torps. They're just going to hit that guy, and then that's going to prevent them from actually doing any damage to any of the enemies. And besides, looks like Shima is maybe going in for the YOLO. Not necessarily a great idea, given that a single secondary hit could take him out, but then again, he is a Shima, so he's very stealthy. And then there's the Minnesota coming around the corner, shooting at the Kronstadt. Shimakaze does launch the torpedoes. We start shooting at the Minnesota, and honestly, that probably prompts him to start turning a little bit, which is going to cause him to avoid the Shimakaze torpedoes. Whether that was intentional on his part, I mean, I think any battleship in his position should have known there would be torpedoes coming through, but whether that is because we shot at him or because he suspected the torpedoes were coming through, now he's turned around, he's broadside to the Kronstadt's guns, which are no joke, especially at this range, and he's got an island directly in front of him, so he's probably going to beach himself. Meanwhile, Shimakaze gets spotted. He doesn't actually shoot his guns at the Kronstadt, though. Instead, he sinks him with torpedoes, so as soon as the Kronstadt goes down, Shima goes dark. We can't shoot at him anymore, but we can shoot at the Minnesota, who has indeed beached himself. Shimakaze has missed all of his torpedoes on the Minnesota. Honestly, I'm not sure how. I saw that beaching coming from a mile away. So my torpedoes are going straight toward the Minnesota as he reverses away from that island. They're going to hit him unless he can somehow achieve light speed on that slow ship. He does shoot us, but only with his front or back 2 turrets, and hits us with 2 shells. They did do a lot of damage, by the way. They were only overpens, but each overpen from him does like 1,400 damage, so you can sort of see why in the beginning I was very conservative on shooting at the enemy battleships or even trying to push into the Elbing. In any case, torpedoes secure the kill on the Minnesota, and that leaves the Shimakaze left alive. It's Kraken time, right? Well, did you notice the name of the friendly Shimakaze? He's a buzzkill. His name is literally Buzzkill, and Buzzkill indeed, as he takes our Kraken from us. But I guess it's not something to complain about. At least we won. I don't really get too hung up on quote-unquote kill stealing, even though a Kraken would have been nice. And the guy does, despite the buzzkill that he is, finish above me on the leaderboard. So GG to Shimakaze. You don't see those well played so often, so I'm glad to see that. Hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.